Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Drak Reviews. And unlike Wednesday, where we were taking on expanded content, today we're going to be taking on a full game. And unfortunately, one that, like I had to in my Drak Tries check-in, I can't really provide footage for. Why? Because it's a 3DS game, and unfortunately, I don't have a homebrewed 3DS to be able to capture that footage for you. And I know a lot of people screamed out at me going, well, just point your camera at. I never, ever like the videos that do that. It never looks good to me. There's always some kind of a glare on the screen, and I feel it's unprofessional, and that's why I don't do that for you guys. I do not want to give you guys what I feel to be an unprofessional video on the matter. So unfortunately, this is just going to have to do. I'm going to be adding in background music and all that fun stuff, but here is my review of Metroid Prime Federation Force. Now, people remember when the announcement came out for this early March. Well, it came out, or we got an announcement at the previous E3, but at March, I said I was willing to give it a shot, even though at the previous E3 I wasn't, mainly because they had talked about adding in more unique gameplay. And we got a couple of other screenshots that made it look somewhat interesting. So I picked it up. And I did do a Drak Tries, which was basically a check-in after playing it for an hour and giving you guys my thoughts. As of this video, I have put in, I kind of lost tally of it, but it was it was between 5 to 10 hours in the game. And so let's go over the pieces, and then we'll give a final score to it. As far as story is concerned, pretty much nothing has changed in the story scheme of things from the Drak Tries. You're part of the Federation Force, appointed by the Galactic Federation to go and handle problems within their isolated outposts, things like that. And it confines it to being able to go to specific worlds and solve missions for it, but you're not necessarily playing as Samus. You're playing as a Federation Force Marine who is in a mech suit that somewhat simulates Samus's power armor. With obviously some new integrations because it is a 3DS game, and well, we have a fancy stylus that we can move things around. But the premise of the story is basically going and doing missions on 4 worlds. If there is a 5th, I've never come across it, but I believe it's 4 worlds that you go specifically to, and this all goes to an overarching plot with space pirates. Overall, I mean, the story is good as far as a Metroid game goes, especially since we don't really have a character that we're playing as. We're just playing as Marine A, and since there is multiplayer enabled to it, you could say there's a Marine B, a Marine C, and a Marine D, ultimately, because I do believe it adds up to 4 players. So while that is interesting, I found some things to fault with it because I would have liked a connection to either Metroids or more of a overarching plot, which as of my gameplay, I didn't really see one of like connected events with the space pirates. So that's kind of hard for me to sell, but if I were to say I took off points, I didn't take off that much. Visually, so that's roughly the story. Visually, I mean, it's Metroid Prime on 3DS. I don't know necessarily how else to call it. Aside from that, it looks shiny and new. It looks like they're obviously improving the interface as well as improving the visuals for a Metroid Prime game. But for the most part, it still feels visually like a Metroid Prime game. And so to me, it's like, I don't necessarily want to say it's innovated that much, but that's a personal nitpick, and visually I can't say I have any major problems with it. I didn't have any visual glitches or things that look weird or wonky, so I am going to say that visually it works just fine. Gameplay wise, again, it's a Metroid Prime game, and I hate to be the guy here to say this, but I'm not a fan of the Metroid Prime games. I'm a fan, when it comes to Metroid, I am a fan of the classic Metroid games and Other M. Yeah, I said it. Fanboys, come at me, Scrumlord, I'm ripped. I don't care. I liked Other M, unlike a lot of people, and I didn't have the problems that a lot of people did. I'm not saying that the Prime games were bad. I like the Prime games too, but if you gave me a choice between playing, I don't know, Other M and Prime, I'd probably play Other M, because to me, Other M has more of the Metroid gameplay that I want to have. Yeah, there's first person elements in Other M, but it's not completely in the visor. You actually can see the atmosphere around you. And I'm not saying, I mean, you get to see that from the visor's point of view, but it's just not as immersive as people like to claim to me that it is. But I'm digressing. It's, gameplay wise, it feels like a Metroid Prime game. A lot of the basic mechanics are still there, although rotated around to meet the 3DS's design. And like I said, they did add extra mechanics because of the fact that now we have a snazzy new stylus to work with. And so now you can like manually aim with the stylus instead of just using your own sticks. That actually became a personal frustration because I like sticks. I don't necessarily, if I don't have to use the stylus, I don't use the stylus. So at that point, the game kind of forces you into it because a lot of the shots that you're going to have to make are going to be in this manual aim. And I didn't like that. I really wish that it would have said, okay, can I put this into a mode where all of that manual stuff is kind of more suggested rather than made you do it. And they don't really necessarily do that. But the gameplay is solid. I mean, it's a Metroid Prime game. There's very few problems that I saw with it. There were a couple of glitches here and there when I did the Drak tries. Aside from that, I didn't really experience any other major problems, but I did take points off for the fact that they don't necessarily kind of urge you or kind of mildly push you into the new to the new aiming mechanism. Rather, they just outright force you, as far as I'm concerned. And I did take points off for that. Audio-wise, I actually was kind of surprised at the audio. We still did have some what would appear to be classic tracks, but for the most part, I did hear a lot of the tracks that I heard in the planets that I did experience did sound new. And it did sound intriguing. Like, if I could actually buy the soundtrack, I probably would. Metroid music has always been very fascinating to me, especially with the isolated feel. I'm trying to remember if there actually was voice integration. I think in the tutorial there was, but then they didn't really do much else aside from that. And that's not necessarily a fault. I mean, the Prime series, aside from maybe Prime 3, yeah, Prime 3 had voices, but 2 and 1 didn't. And frankly, the story that they're trying to tell with it, voice doesn't, it's an addition that you can have with the story, but it doesn't necessarily help or hurt it. As long as it's done right. So the audio does get good marks from me. Yeah, I don't think I had any major audio glitches like, scratchy noises or anything like that. No, it sounded good. Replay value and presentation. Replay value, I have a feeling that there's going to be a bunch of, or at least I remember people talking about like Street Pass missions that you could do as additional content. So there is replay value in that if that's legit. I wasn't able to confirm it myself because I don't really use Street Pass or any of the online features aside from the eShop, really. And then as far as presentation, I mean, if you're a Metroid Prime fan, this comes together perfectly, especially since you're not playing as Samus. To me, however, not being a fan of the Prime games, it's kind of a boring slog. That's why in a lot of cases I didn't get more than 5 to 10 hours, is because I'm not a fan of the Prime games. I had to force my way through Prime 1 and 2 to be able to finish those, and 3 was so messed up on the Wii's controls that I said no. I eventually, I think I made a promise to myself that I was going to watch a Let's Play of it, and I still haven't gotten around to it. So overall, I mean, the presentation works for a Metroid Prime fan, but is it necessarily something I would recommend to somebody brand new? If you were a fan of shooters, then yeah, I would. And you were looking for something to play on your DS, I would do that wholeheartedly. If you weren't, then probably not. And that actually comes to the final bit, which is my final score for Metroid Prime Federation Force being a 7 out of 10. It is slightly above average. It is a C as far as I'm concerned, but again, I am biased. I am not a fan of the Prime games. I really would like to have another classic Metroid game or another other M kind of game. And so this unfortunately doesn't hit me that well, but it's not like I can say it's a bad game. It's overall really, really good. I think Prime fans and shooter fans will be able to enjoy it. Nintendo fans obviously will have no problem with it, especially if they're fans of Metroid. And yeah, so it's a solid C as far as I'm concerned. And that's going to go ahead and do it for me for this review of Metroid Prime Federation Force. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a comment to let me know what you guys thought of Federation Force. I'm always happy to hear you guys' feedback on it. And also, thank you so much for subscribing, liking, and doing all of the awesome things you guys do for my content. I really do appreciate it. And of course, I will see you guys next time for the next review.